Hello and welcome to Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast, a podcast where we discuss all things relating to your well-being, including interviews with experts in the fields of nutrition, physical and mental health, and my 5-minute food facts series. I'm Amanda Hayes, your host, a nutritionist with a passion for well-being. Before I introduce today's guests, I will take a moment to let you know that you can subscribe to my podcast on YouTube, hit the red subscribe button, or on your favourite podcast app, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify, or Google Podcasts. I will also mention that although I'll often be speaking with experts, any information or advice provided in Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast is not intended to be used to treat, cure, or prevent injuries, disease, or medical conditions, and is not a substitute for advice from your own health professionals. Today I am here with my dentist, George Forrest, to discuss oral health. So good oral health is fundamental to overall health and well-being, and we'll discover why as my conversation with George progresses. Two of the most common oral diseases are tooth decay, referred to as caries, and periodontal disease, which is gum disease. Did you know that around 4 in 10 children aged between 5 and 10, in Australia that is, have had dental caries in their baby teeth? And that proportion is unfortunately 1.5 times higher for Indigenous children. In other words, 60% of Indigenous children have experienced dental caries. It's also higher for kids from low-income households, and it's also higher for kids in remote and very remote areas. So today we'll look at oral health in more depth, including the impacts of poor oral health and how to ensure that you can look after your teeth and gums. Hi George, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, it's exciting.
So I'd like to focus on oral health, but before we dive into that, George, can you tell us about your pathway to becoming a dentist?
Absolutely. So I've been a dentist for 10 years, and it was something that I was always aware of growing up and through school. Dad's a dentist, and it was something that I'd aimed at through the later part of my schooling, and I've always watched Dad enjoy his work, and I think that's always seemed appealing.
Okay, so you
more or less,
floundering around like many school leavers with
to a point, more or less, yep.
Yeah, and so where did you study?
So at Adelaide, 5-year degree in Adelaide.
5 years,
yes.
Yep. And now that you're obviously working and have been for a while, what are some of the things you like most about your job?
What appeals to me now is the day-to-day interactions with people, and it's varied and hands-on, but it's also changing. There's lots of updates, materials and technologies which keep it interesting. And,
that's good.
Yeah, ever-changing.
And what would you say are some of the most challenging things about being a dentist?
There are a few. Probably the most challenging thing, I think, is dealing with people who are often have places they'd rather be.
Oh, really?
To put it lightly.
Yeah.
And so managing emotions and expectations associated with that. But I've been very lucky in that I've got a very good mentor or role model in Dad who's very good at this, and he's an exceptional dentist, and I've inherited a lot of patients from him that have been turned around from previous bad experiences and have since had long and happy relationship with his as a dentist. So
yeah, because some people do get nervous about going to a dentist, definitely. And they're worried that it's going to hurt and all of those things.
Yeah, and it's understandable. It's out of your control. It's not a particularly comfortable thing, and so that's always something that's in the back of my mind. That really trying to make an experience for someone better than anticipated, and really striving to improve on what people expect.
I've certainly experienced that with you, George. The dentist I used to see in Hong Kong, I used to have white knuckles by the end of it because he was quite rough. It was always painful.
Yeah.
But it's a necessary part of life.
Yeah, it is.
So according to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, good oral health is fundamental to overall health and well-being.
Yes.
So I'd really like to look at that. And I thought we'd start with looking at what poor oral health is, because that will paint a picture then of why it is important to look after your teeth and your gums. So perhaps you could just tell us, what is poor oral health and what forms can it take? For example, tooth decay.
Sure. So poor oral health or disease would be the presence of any disease like caries or dental decay, gum disease, or anything that negatively impacts your ability to bite, chew, speak, or psychologically function well.
And what are some of the causes?
The major one really is, it's mostly stems from bacteria. So plaque is basically a collection of bacteria, lots of different types of bacteria that stick to the tooth surface, and they metabolize dietary carbohydrates. So the more refined sugar is able to be metabolized easily, and then these produce acid as a byproduct of this metabolism, and it's the acid that then is able to demineralize or break down the tooth structure, and that's how decay forms.
Okay.
It was thought that it was one particular type of bacteria, Streptococcus mucins, which was the main one, but it's since been shown that it's lots and lots of different types of bacteria that all combine to form this plaque. So it's not just one bacteria that's really the issue, and they're all present in healthy mouths.
Yeah, okay.
But in disproportionate numbers in disease. So
okay.
So there's thoughts about a vaccine that would stop caries or decay, or why can't we just treat this one bacteria that would stop it? But it's a multitude of them that are all working together. A bit more complicated.
So you mentioned refined sugars. So what are the worst foods then for your teeth?
Anything really with that available sugar for the bacteria to metabolize. So that's the acid produced is just a byproduct of them getting by, and the more easily they're able to metabolize that sugar, then the more they proliferate, the more acid they produce, and the more damage that does. And then so gum disease is a result of the toxins that these bacteria produce, and that causes inflammation in the tissues or the gums around the teeth. And then the result of that is gingivitis or gum inflammation. And then if that's left unchecked or untreated, then the bone underneath becomes inflamed.
Oh dear. And
its response is to then shrink away from that area of inflammation. So over time you do lose bone cumulatively. So really the idea of cleaning your teeth is to mechanically scrub away the plaque or the bacteria that sticks to your teeth with the bristles of your toothbrush. And also the idea with floss is to then scrape the areas in between your teeth that the brush can't reach, wipe away the bacteria that then start to build up again almost straight away. So you're reducing the amount of bacteria present that can't metabolize the carbohydrates that are in your mouth, and less acid, less toxins, and a healthier mouth.
So if someone didn't treat gum disease and the bone was inflamed and shrinking away, would their teeth fall out?
Yeah, eventually.
They sort of lose their anchor.
Yep.
So for
exactly
want of a better word,
definitely. Yep.
And we've sort of touched on it a bit, but can we talk about what the consequences of poor oral health are? Not just disease, but does it affect people socially as well, for example?
Yeah, yep. So there's a big psychological impact as well. 2 to 3 generations ago, people were having all their teeth pulled out as wedding presents or 21st presents and dentures made.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, you think, imagine what that would do to your, self-confidence as a 21-year-old to have all your teeth whipped out just in case they cause any problems. So I think that's a major thing, but also just day-to-day functioning is sort of the obvious one. But it does run deeper than that as well.
I guess it can affect obviously your ability to chew.
Yes.
And also possibly to speak as well.
Definitely. Yep. And then even if we do lose teeth, then things like dentures, even the best made denture in the world is never going to be as good as your natural teeth to function on.
Yeah.
And so then function becomes compromised, and you start to lose that feeling of health and ability.
One thing I've always wondered about, but it's not a nice topic, if someone has gum disease or tooth decay, do they have bad breath?
Yeah, often. So
Yeah.
a lot of the time bad breath is caused by those bacteria and the older, mature bacteria that are able to hang around for a few days without being cleaned away either by brushing or flossing. It can definitely give off bad breath.
Oh dear,
and
poor
so,
you.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. But
Occupational hazard.
yeah, with people that don't floss, I think if you're not sure whether you should floss or not, I think if you just give the floss a bit of a whiff, if you haven't done it for a few days, that's a pretty good incentive to keep going. So,
okay.
but there are certain bacteria that do produce bad odors more than others, and in certain situations that's the cause, but more than likely it is just a build-up of plaque getting left behind somewhere.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep.
I read as well that some groups suffer disproportionately from oral disease, like for example the Indigenous population.
Yes.
And lower income households. And so what do you think are some of the reasons for that?
There's a few main ones, but broadly, the way we measure that is decayed, missing, or filled teeth. So the amount of teeth that have either got decay present, that are either missing or have fillings in them. And statistically, that increases as the total household income decreases. So lower total household incomes tend to have more decayed, missing, or filled teeth. And other groups that are at disadvantage are the same: refugees, the homeless, people from different backgrounds that have difficulty accessing dental care.
Yeah, so access is
a major one. So and rural
cost?
Australians, definitely cost.
Yeah.
Rural people in regional areas. So as remoteness increases, oral health generally decreases.
Right.
So the main reasons are that it is just trickier to access care.
Yeah, to get there.
People are less likely to have preventative work done. The lack of fluoride in regional water supplies can be a big one. But it is also that the difficulty in frequently accessing the care needed and the increased cost in getting there to have it done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. I wonder what can be done about that.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's the same with medical care.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, access is a tricky one to overcome.
Because Australia's such a massive place, isn't it?
Yep.
People can live a long way from those services.
Yeah, definitely.
So then I wanted to have a chat about the life cycle of teeth. So we all know that we're born with no visible teeth, and then we grow baby teeth and they fall out. We have our permanent adult teeth that come in, and then the wisdom teeth come in and join the party.
Yes.
So what I was wondering about is if someone doesn't look after their baby teeth and they have some kind of, or perhaps decay, or maybe not gum disease, but decay, and then their adult teeth come in, do they get a second chance, or is the damage done?
No, more or less, yes. So statistically, decay in baby teeth is more likely to lead to decay in adult teeth.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's not you're not predisposed to it. So it generally, especially with baby teeth, diet seems to be more important than oral hygiene. So as a young kid or an early teens, you're not necessarily expecting that someone's oral hygiene, their brushing and flossing is going to be as good as it will be later.
Yeah.
But it seems that if you really minimise the frequency of contact with sugar, that seems to be the main help. So it's not so much the amount as the frequency or the amount of time that it's in contact with those the bacteria in the plaque.
So snacking all day or drinking juice all day is a bad idea.
Yep. Yeah. Or going to bed with a bottle where it can just sit around the teeth, those sort of things. But it is that timing or exposure that seems to do the damage rather than ability to brush, because it's a battle for everyone trying to get little kids to brush.
It sure is, isn't it?
No magic answer to that.
Even not from you.
No.
It is hard. It is hard. The other thing we know about oral health is that it deteriorates with age. So children between 6 and 14 have an average of 0.5 decayed, missing or filled teeth. People from 35 to 54 have an average of 14.4 of those teeth, and over 75 have an average of 24.3. So it does go up quite significantly. Why is that?
With that measure of teeth that have either had decay or are missing or are filled, it's really the exposure with time or the cumulative damage that's caused.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a lot more conservative now than it used to be, with materials that are much better and enabling us to be more conservative. But it used to be that teeth were filled with amalgams, and then with time a bit of tooth might break away and the amalgam gets bigger, and then eventually bigger and bigger, and then a tooth might split and need to come out. So over the course of a lifetime of a tooth, that can lead it to either becoming decayed, being filled, or eventually splitting or breaking and needing to come out, and
Do
then
they
being
essentially
missing.
just get worn out or worn down?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, and everyone's different. Some people are harder on their teeth than others.
Yeah.
But also that people are living much longer now, and
that's
often
true.
outliving their teeth to some degree.
Outliving their teeth.
Yeah, or their ability to look after them,
Yeah.
effectively. But they can last beautifully well. And again, it seems to be diet that's the main thing to keep them going well, and a cumulative lifetime of looking after them rather than trying to make amends, because then often those teeth that have had fillings in them then are more prone to breakage and bigger fillings. And exactly. So it's sort of a bit of a cumulative wear and tear over time.
Speaking of aging teeth, when I was at uni, I worked at a nursing home in the kitchen, but I had two quite odd add-ons to my job, and that involved putting two women to bed, and one of them was named Adelaide, and part of my job was I had to pop out her dentures,
lovely. Yep.
give them a scrub and pop them back in, because she liked to sleep with them in. Some people had them in a glass bar beside their bed, so that I thought that was quite funny, to be honest. She was such a sweet lady, I didn't mind.
It's not the nicest jobs cleaning.
Well, it was kind of weird because I was working in the kitchen, but anyway, there you go. What about wisdom teeth? So can you tell me a bit about them? What are they, and when do they come through? So
wisdom teeth are your third molars. So you've got first molars, which are 6-year-old molars. They come through at about 6 years old. The second molars, which are 12-year-old molars, which come through at 12. And then wisdom teeth are really variable. So basically, evolutionary wise, we're much more petite and delicate in our jaws than we were, so often there's not enough room in the jaw for this third set of teeth to come through, and they're also really frequently just missing. They just don't form at all. And so if they do form and are able to come through, usually it'll be anywhere from sort of 18 to 30 years old. Girls are usually a bit earlier than guys. And if there's enough room and they come through, great, they're an extra set of molars. But if they come through and get stuck or impacted, then that's when we'll have to do something about them, take them out, because either the wisdom tooth is more prone to decay, or it can damage the teeth around it. And so if it's a tooth that's stuck half in, half out, that's not going to ever do you any favours. It's better out than in, so it doesn't damage other teeth around it. But if they stay below the gum, they can stay there. There's no need to go chasing them. If they're sort of stuck there, do they hurt? Do they... The gum can, not as in a typical toothache, but the gum can get inflamed and puffy and sore and swollen. Right. So that's one of the reasons then. Yeah, so if that's an ongoing thing, then better out than in. I wonder if we'll evolve away from having them. Who knows? Maybe, Look, eventually it makes sense, but it might be a while still. But I don't think we'll see. There'll be a few more taken out between now and then. Yep. So we've had a look at some of the oral health issues and poor oral health. So now let's talk about good oral health. Sure, good. Because that's really important. Yep. And obviously you're an expert, George. So I think first of all, we might talk about your own oral hygiene practice. So what does that look like? Can you, or the ideal one? Put me under the microscope. Yes. Well, look, as I said before, it's really just about mechanically cleaning away that plaque. So whether it's with an electric toothbrush or a manual toothbrush, there's no real difference in whether you use a manual toothbrush thoroughly, then that's really adequate. But an electric toothbrush is great because it makes it easier to do a good job than with a manual one. But if you're using a manual one diligently, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But for a lot of people, the electric one just gives it a bit of a bit of an edge.
Mm-hmm.
And so twice daily brushing is important, morning and night.
Yeah.
And really flossing or little interdental cleaning brushes, which are like little bottle brushes. They basically do the same job as floss in that they poke between the teeth and just wipe away any plaque that's on the sides of your teeth that, again, the toothbrush can't get to. And twice a day with that is superhuman. Once a day is pretty good. So,
okay.
Yep. And then as far as anything else, there's mouth rinses, which are, I think, a matter of preference. They're no competition for that mechanical scraping away of the plaque, even though they're advertised beautifully.
Yeah. I personally don't like them much, so I actually don't use them.
Yeah, look, I'd say it's a preference. If you like them, great. If not, don't worry about it. But there's certain antibacterial mouth rinses that are good short term, but there's none that are strong enough or effective enough to be an alternative to brushing, really, as a long-term thing. Mm-hmm. But the one thing to be careful with mouth rinses is often the alcohol content in them is very high.
Is that right? Yeah,
so a normal sort of Listerine or one like that, often the alcohol is 20% of it. So the alcohol is used as a preservative, and there are links between mouth cancer and oral alcohol.
Right.
So if you are going to use a mouth rinse, then a zero alcohol or a low alcohol one's the way to go.
So does that mean we can buy alcohol in the supermarket?
You can. Yeah, you might not want to drink it, but you can get it. Yeah.
And what about toothpaste? Is some better than others? I assume they might be.
Again, there's pretty good advertising for much the same, but really, as long as it's got fluoride in it, then anything else is a matter of preference. But certainly having that fluoride where you've got a continual low dose exposure to it, so morning and night, seems to be really beneficial, because the fluoride actually gets incorporated into the tooth, into the enamel, and it makes it harder than it would otherwise be.
I see.
So that's the benefit of fluoride, and likewise having it in drinking water, that constant low dose exposure to it is really beneficial in making the enamel more resistant to that acid attack than it would otherwise be, and strengthening it, and also being able to reverse early signs of damage or early stages of damage.
Right. Do we have fluoride in our enamel anyway, and we're just topping it up? Or
No, it's so fluoride's naturally. So there's small amounts, but it's a naturally occurring thing. So food and groundwater basically has fluoride in it, but it's been added to the mains water supply since the late 60s, early 70s, and it is a very good preventative healthcare thing that's saved a lot of teeth, because it does.
That's interesting.
Does then make the enamel stronger than it would otherwise be.
Okay. And what about in terms of good foods for your teeth? Are there some that we talked about what can damage your teeth? Are there some that can promote the health of your teeth? Yeah,
look, I mean, without sounding negative, I think it is mainly avoiding bad things that tends to do. That's more beneficial than zeroing in on good things. But certainly good things are, dairy is good. Really whole food sort of eating with less refined sugar and less available sort of carbohydrates like that.
So food that would otherwise be good for your diet anyway.
Exactly.
Good for your general health.
Yeah, if it's good for you, it's probably good for
your teeth. Yep. What about alcohol? Just because that has sugar in it, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And the other thing is it can be quite acidic. So whether or not anything's got sugar in it, if there's acid in a drink, so soft drinks like a diet soft drink that might not have any sugar but can still be acidic, will wear the enamel away. So it basically just does dissolve the enamel or the minerals in the enamel. And so likewise, wine can do that as well. But short sort of exposure to it, having a glass or two or 10 or whatever is less damaging than, again, frequently sipping on it. So alcohol is probably less of an issue than, say, sitting at your desk with a single can of Coke or Diet Coke that it takes you a day to get through, because again, if you're having one sip every half an hour, it's just constantly eating away at the enamel, and it doesn't give your saliva that ability to come back and remineralize it and reverse that.
So that's what saliva does.
It does, yeah. Okay. So there's that old extra ad where after chewing, it goes back above the line, and it's true that if you was to sit down and drink a whole can of Coke, that's far less damaging to your teeth than sipping away at it over a day, because it just keeps that
that's good
keeps
advice.
that acid challenge on your teeth. Yeah.
So scull your Coke, everyone.
Get it down. Yeah, if you're going to it all, get it down quickly, and then rinse your mouth afterwards.
I've also heard that in running and cycling circles, we use those gels a lot, and they're quite sweet.
Yeah.
And they're a bit sticky, so they
probably hang around.
Mouth. They're probably not very good for you, but I guess you hopefully come home and clean your teeth.
Yeah, or if it's a means to an end to allow you to run like that, I think go for it. But sports drinks, so Powerades and Gatorades again are sugary but also acidic too. Right. So they're one to watch out for.
They've done some tricky marketing too. They're sort of made to look like they're almost healthy, but they're not really.
Yeah, I know.
Only in very specific circumstances are they actually a good choice.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. And again, as athletes, if you're just sipping it over a long period of time, then that'll have a chance to do more damage than just knocking it back. Yeah.
And in terms of brushing your teeth, how long do you think is the best amount
2 minutes is the magic number. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So about 4 seconds a tooth. So you're really looking at cleaning each surface, so the outside, the top, and the inside, and not so much just brushing your teeth to get it done, but actually making sure that you're not leaving any areas where plaque can build up that can then damage your teeth or sit there for a few days and go smelly and cause bad breath. You really want to get to every surface and brush away the plaque. 2
minutes, everybody. That's what we should aim for.
That's what we like
to see. You need a little one of those
little egg timers.
Egg timer, don't you?
Yeah. Or electric brushes now. A lot of them will buzz or vibrate every 30 seconds, so it's time to move on to the next little bit.
Do you think for kids that it's better to have an electric toothbrush?
I think so,
because their dexterity is not quite as good as well.
And also the novelty value of having something makes it a bit more appealing. But to have something that will buzz or play a song once 2 minutes is up is a good incentive as well.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think that ship sailed in my family. Yep. My kids never had them. And then, that brings me to my final question. So if you could recommend 2 things that all people could do to improve their well-being, what would they be? It doesn't have to be related to your oral health. It can be anything.
Yeah, okay. Well, dentally, really, I think minimising the frequency of contact with sugar rather than the amount is the main one. Mm-hmm. And secondly, getting away from soft drinks and water or even soda water is a much better way to go.
Yeah, I think I can't think of any positive health benefits of soft drink, really.
No.
And that's just another reason not to drink it, because it's bad for your teeth.
Yeah, exactly, and the rest of you. But otherwise, personally, breathe deep and keep smiling.
Yeah, keep smiling.
Yep.
That's good. Well, you help everyone smile, George, because you fix their teeth. Thanks so much for joining me today, George.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'll see you soon.
Yep, we'll be there.
And that was Dr. George Forrest of Forrest Dental. And I can promise you that I have never had white knuckles when I visited George. He's very gentle, and if you live in Adelaide, you might be interested to know about his practice, so I will put a link in the show notes. Thank you for listening today. You can subscribe to Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, and while you're there, click on the bell to be alerted when new episodes are available. You can also subscribe on your favourite podcast app, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify or Google Podcasts, and you can follow the podcast on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Direct links to all social media can be found on the subscribe page of my website at www.amandaswellbeingpodcast.com. If you would like to contact me, you can send me a message via the contacts page on my website. Please feel free to suggest topics you'd like to learn more about and people you'd like to hear interviewed, and I'll do my best to deliver that to you. Producing the podcast is a labour of love. We put in a lot of time, money and effort behind the scenes. So if you enjoy Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast and would like to make a contribution via Patreon, PayPal or by Amazon to help ensure we continue to provide you with excellent content, please visit the Contribute page on my website. Finally, please take a minute to leave a rating on iTunes. It improves visibility and will help me source excellent guests. Thank you for tuning in. Eat well, move well, think well.